Best Actress in a Supporting Role. And the nominees goes to Marisa Tomei in My Cousin Vinny.
March 29, 1993. The world watched as Jack Palance, rugged and legendary, stepped onto the Academy Awards stage. The room fell still. And then he opened the envelope, paused for just a heartbeat too long, and declared, "Marisa Tomei, My Cousin Vinny." Applause thundered through the theater, but beneath it, an undercurrent of disbelief began to stir. There she stood, just 28 years old, her face lit with shock and emotion as she rose from her seat. The cameras captured her trembling smile, her disbelief, and her joy. But behind that gold statuette she now held in her hands, something much darker had begun to unfold. Because, as the audience clapped, the whispers started. Was that the right name? It should have been a triumph, a celebration of a breakout performance that had charmed audiences and stunned critics. My Cousin Vinny wasn't just a comedy, it was lightning in a bottle. And Marisa Tomei's portrayal of Mona Lisa Vito wasn't just funny. It was fierce, smart, and unforgettable. She delivered courtroom monologues like a seasoned lawyer, cracked jokes with razor-sharp timing, and commanded the screen in every scene she touched. She didn't just play the role, she became it. But despite all that, when her name was called, the reaction wasn't pure celebration. It was tinted with disbelief. In a room full of Hollywood royalty and dramatic heavyweights, Tomei's win seemed to defy the unwritten rules of Oscar tradition. She hadn't starred in a biopic. She hadn't wept through a harrowing tragedy. She wasn't a veteran with decades of dramatic work behind her. No, she was the vibrant newcomer in a comedy about two bumbling lawyers in Alabama. That wasn't supposed to win. Not here. Not now. And yet, she had. The moment her name echoed through the Dolby Theater, it became one of the most talked-about wins in Oscar history. News outlets rushed to cover it. Some praised her as a bold, fresh choice, a signal that the Academy was evolving. Others hesitated. Articles surfaced questioning whether her performance truly stood alongside the likes of Vanessa Redgrave and Judy Davis. But none dared say it outright. Not yet. Behind closed doors, in studio hallways and smoky tabloid offices, a different story began to spread. A rumor. A single quiet question that would soon explode into a controversy lasting decades. Had Jack Palance read the wrong name? Was it a simple human error? Or something else entirely? That night, Tomei went to sleep, an Oscar winner, but she would wake up to a career forever marked not just by the triumph of that golden statue, but by the storm it had unknowingly unleashed. To understand the magnitude of this moment, we must journey back to where it all began. From the vibrant streets of Brooklyn to the dazzling lights of Hollywood, Marisa Tomei's journey was anything but ordinary. Her story began in a tight-knit Italian-American household, where the voices were loud, the emotions ran high, and the dinner table felt like a stage of its own. It was a world built on warmth, grit, and expressive storytelling, a world that didn't just raise her, it shaped her. Her mother, a schoolteacher with a love for literature, and her father, a trial lawyer with courtroom flair, unknowingly gave her both the intellect and instinct for performance. Brooklyn didn't just give Marisa a zip code, it gave her a voice, one that was raw, honest, and deeply human. Even as a child, Marisa didn't shy away from attention. She wasn't loud for the sake of being loud. She had something to say, and she said it with a spark in her eye. Her early love for acting didn't bloom on television sets or movie screens. It started in school auditoriums and community theaters, where she learned that performance wasn't just about pretending, it was about connecting. While other kids chased applause, Marisa chased truth. Each role, no matter how small, was treated like a calling. There was no pretense, no polish, just a girl discovering that emotion, when expressed fully, had power. After graduating from Edward R. Murrow High School, she took a traditional next step, enrolling at Boston University. But even that felt like a delay. The lecture halls didn't thrill her the way the stage did. It wasn't long before the pull of New York City's auditions became too loud to ignore. She walked away from the academic path, not in rebellion, but in pursuit of something she felt in her bones destiny. And New York, unpredictable and unforgiving, answered back with a test. Prove yourself, or fade away. Tomei chose to prove. Her first major break came not with fanfare, but in the world of daytime drama. As the World Turns cast her as Marcy Thompson, and suddenly she was learning the demands of working under pressure, memorizing lines overnight, performing 5 days a week, holding her own in a world where even a glance could make or break a scene. It was brutal, but it was also a boot camp, a rite of passage, and Marisa thrived. Then came a different world, where she stepped into a primetime spotlight. The sitcom, a spin-off of The Cosby Show, was unlike anything she'd done before. It was bold, culturally important, and fast-paced. As one of the few white characters on the show, she stood out, but never out of place. Her role added contrast and comedy, and it was here that her natural timing, her ease, and that Brooklyn-born authenticity began catching the industry's eye. Directors noticed, so did audiences. She wasn't glamorous in the Hollywood sense. She didn't chase roles that required transformation for transformation's sake. Instead, she built a reputation for bringing something others couldn't manufacture. Truth. A truth that could be funny, flawed, feisty, or fragile, but always real. It was this essence that made casting directors look twice, because while others performed, Marisa revealed. But it was a courtroom comedy that would catapult her into the spotlight. She wasn't just playing a role, she embodied a character that would become iconic. When Marisa Tomei walked into the casting room for My Cousin Vinny, the filmmakers weren't looking for a legend. They were looking for a loud, whip-smart, stylish New Yorker who could hold her own in a courtroom full of skeptics and do it with comic precision. What they got was something far more potent. From the first line she delivered, Marisa didn't read Mona Lisa Vito, she was Mona Lisa Vito. It wasn't just the accent, the attitude, or the look. It was the rhythm, the heartbeat of a woman who didn't ask for space, she took it. Confident, confrontational, and utterly unforgettable. She didn't audition, she detonated. The role was a gamble for the producers. Mona Lisa was originally envisioned as brash, over the top, maybe even bordering on caricature. But Tomei brought nuance where none was required, layering sarcasm with sincerity and strength with surprising softness. She crafted a woman who could argue with her fiancé 1 minute and drop expert-level car knowledge the next without breaking stride. Mona Lisa wasn't just comic relief, she was vital. Her courtroom monologue about tire marks and suspension systems was more than funny. It was sharp, specific, and brilliant. It turned a punchline into a plot point. And suddenly, audiences weren't just laughing, they were paying attention. Critics took notice almost immediately. What could have been a throwaway character in a legal farce became the soul of the film. Reviewers praised her timing, her authenticity, and the energy she brought to every frame. While Joe Pesci delivered the chaos, Tomei delivered the calibration. She was the film's surprise weapon, the burst of Brooklyn fire that elevated My Cousin Vinny from silly courtroom comedy to cult classic. And yet, despite the overwhelming praise, there was a lingering tension beneath the surface, because comedic roles like this didn't typically earn Oscars. The Academy was notorious for favoring the tragic, the tortured, the historical. Humor was rarely seen as high art, but Marisa Tomei was changing that perception in real time. The momentum started slowly, with critics whispering her name in awards conversations. Then came the smaller wins, the early nominations, and then she was announced as an official Oscar contender for Best Supporting Actress. It was groundbreaking. A comedic role, a genuinely funny, fast-talking, unapologetically brash woman, being recognized in a category usually reserved for weeping widows or war survivors. For Tomei, this wasn't just personal validation. It was a quiet rebellion against Hollywood's hierarchy of what talent looked like. As the awards season approached, anticipation grew, but so did the whispers. A name announced, a stunned audience, and the beginning of a decades-long debate. The 65th Academy Awards were supposed to be like any other glittering night in Hollywood, a parade of elegance, prestige, and predictability. But then, Jack Palance, the weathered actor with a voice like gravel and a smirk that said he'd seen it all, walked to the podium to present Best Supporting Actress. He opened the envelope. A pause. And then, with deliberate clarity, he spoke. "Marisa Tomei, my cousin Vinny." For a moment, the room froze. Cameras cut to Marisa, wide-eyed and visibly shaken, as if she too couldn't believe what she'd just heard. Then came the applause, warm but fragmented, some celebratory, some stunned. She rose, nervous yet beaming, and made her way to the stage. It should have been the happiest moment of her career, and in many ways it was. But underneath the applause, something unsettling had already begun. Her win didn't fit the mold. The other nominees were all seasoned veterans with dramatic roles. Vanessa Redgrave, Judy Davis, Joan Plowright, Miranda Richardson. These were names steeped in theatrical gravity. And then there was Marisa Tomei, a newcomer known for a role in a comedy that, while beloved, had been widely underestimated. It wasn't just that she won, it was that she wasn't supposed to. Standing on that stage, Tomei clutched the golden statue with trembling hands. Her speech was brief, humble, sincere. She thanked the filmmakers, her co-stars, and her family. There were no theatrics, no grand gestures, just raw gratitude from a young actress who never thought she'd be in that moment. But as she exited the stage, the applause echoing behind her, the first cracks in the celebration began to appear. Whispers spread through the industry like smoke through a velvet curtain. Was it possible that Jack Palance had read the wrong name? Had there been a mistake? A mix-up? A moment of confusion disguised as confidence? The idea seemed absurd until it didn't. Until people, grasping for logic in a win that defied expectations, began repeating the theory. Quietly at first, then more boldly, and the media didn't help. Headlines praised her performance while subtly questioning the win. Analysts and critics debated whether a comedic role could ever truly deserve an Oscar. Some cloaked their doubts in politeness, others were blunt. Was Marisa Tomei's name really on that card? She had no idea that her biggest professional triumph had just planted the seed of a myth that would haunt her for decades. In one night, she had gained an Oscar and lost something she didn't yet know she'd need: the benefit of the doubt. What began as whispers soon escalated into a full-blown controversy. Was it a genuine win or a monumental mistake? The rumor mill churned relentlessly. Just days after Marisa Tomei's Oscar triumph, a whisper emerged that refused to be silenced. According to industry gossip, Jack Palance hadn't actually meant to call her name. He had allegedly misread the card, stumbled through the teleprompter, or worse, said the wrong winner altogether. In any other year, such a claim might have been dismissed immediately. But this wasn't any year, and this wasn't any win. Tomei had defied the odds by taking home the Academy's highest honor for a role in a comedy, a genre that the Oscars had historically ignored. That alone gave the rumor a pulse. Now it had teeth. The speculation was subtle at first, whispered in Hollywood corners and printed as throwaway comments in gossip columns. But it didn't stay there. Within weeks, the media began circling. Talk shows made jokes. Late-night hosts chuckled through monologues. Some critics disguised their doubt as analysis, suggesting the Academy had never truly meant to reward that kind of performance. Others were more blunt, saying flat out that Tomei wasn't deserving, not because of her work, but because of where it came from. A courtroom comedy rather than a war drama. It wasn't her acting they questioned. It was the category she dared to win in. What made things worse was the Academy's silence. There was no official denial, no passionate defense, no detailed explanation of the process. And while insiders insisted that Oscar protocol made such a mistake impossible, the damage was already underway. In a vacuum of truth, the lie found oxygen. The theory grew bolder. Palance was confused. He'd grabbed the wrong card. The Academy panicked and let the moment pass. After all, it would have been too embarrassing to interrupt a live broadcast, right? Marisa, meanwhile, said nothing. And how could she? If she responded, she'd be accused of being defensive. If she stayed silent, she was seen as complicit in the confusion. Either way, her credibility, her worthiness, was being chipped away. Not by any failure of her own, but by a system too slow to stand behind her. She had won the highest accolade in film, and been handed, alongside it, an invisible burden. Prove you deserve it, over and over again. Behind it all lurked something deeper, something uglier. This wasn't just about a supposed flub on stage. It was about a woman winning for being loud, funny, and working class. Mona Lisa Vito wasn't regal or restrained, she was explosive. And in the eyes of many, that didn't belong at the Oscars. The subtext of the controversy became painfully clear. Marisa's win was not only unexpected, it was unacceptable to those who couldn't imagine a comedic woman in leopard print beating out Shakespearean veterans. As the debate intensified, the truth remained elusive. Behind the scenes, a system designed to prevent errors stood firm. Despite the swirling chaos of public opinion and media-fueled gossip, the truth about Marisa Tomei's Oscar win was far less sensational and far more secure. The Academy Awards, with all its pomp and tradition, isn't run on blind luck or casual guesswork. It operates with military-level precision. The votes are tabulated by Price Waterhouse, now known as PwC, a global accounting powerhouse tasked with ensuring that every Oscar result is airtight. The process is locked down, verified, and then verified again. 2 identical sets of winning envelopes are created. 2 accountants are stationed at opposite ends of the stage. Nothing is left to chance. On that night in 1993, Jack Palance didn't grab the wrong card. He wasn't handed the wrong envelope. He read exactly what was printed in bold, deliberate lettering. Marisa Tomei, my cousin Vinny. If a mistake had occurred, there were people in place who would have corrected it instantly, just as they did in 2017 when La La Land was wrongly announced over Moonlight. That moment proved what had always been in place, a fail-safe mechanism. Backstage accountants immediately noticed the mix-up, halted the broadcast, and made it right, even at the risk of public embarrassment. That was the Academy's promise. Accuracy over convenience, truth over damage control. In Tomei's case, there was no such interruption, no backstage panic, no contradiction in the teleprompter, or hesitation from the accountants. And that's because there was no mistake. Price Waterhouse later issued clear and unwavering statements confirming the integrity of the announcement. So did Academy insiders. The narrative that Jack Palance had fumbled the envelope wasn't just false, it was logistically impossible. But logic has never been a match for myth, especially in Hollywood. Despite repeated confirmations from credible sources, the rumor persisted. Year after year, it was recycled in tabloid articles and rehashed in entertainment segments, passed down like folklore from one generation of Oscar watchers to the next. The theory was just too delicious to die. A mix-up, a moment, a mistake the Academy supposedly chose to hide. And the victim of that whispered conspiracy? A woman who had done nothing but deliver an exceptional performance that didn't fit the mold people expected. Because beneath the surface, this wasn't really about a procedural error. It was about disbelief. A young woman in a comedy had taken on titans of drama and won. To those invested in the old rules, that wasn't just shocking, it was offensive. The doubt wasn't about the envelope, it was about her. And no matter how many times the truth was stated, it couldn't outpace the echo of suspicion. Yet, amidst the noise, Tomei remained silent until now. After years of silence, Tomei finally addresses the controversy that haunted her. For more than 2 decades, Marisa Tomei chose grace over confrontation. She let the noise swirl around her, the whispers gain traction, and the myth calcify into Hollywood folklore. But in 2017, the silence cracked. In an interview with The Times of London, she didn't lash out or dramatize the years of speculation. She simply told the truth. And in doing so, she unveiled a deeply personal wound that had been covered for far too long. When I was younger, it hurt my feelings, she admitted, her voice laced with the quiet ache of a woman who had carried the weight of a lie she never asked for. It made me quite ashamed, actually. It wasn't just about a name being questioned on a stage. It was about identity. It was about belonging. Tomei revealed what so many had suspected, that the scrutiny she endured wasn't rooted in doubt over a mistake. It was rooted in bias. The kind of bias that dismisses a working-class accent as unworthy. That devalues comedy as lesser art. That elevates tragedy and suppresses joy. Mona Lisa Vito didn't wear pearls or speak in quiet sophistication. She was brash, loud, unapologetically female, and unmistakably real. For the establishment, that was difficult to digest, and for Marisa, it was impossible to ignore. What hurt wasn't the absence of recognition, it was the constant questioning of what had already been earned. The rumors followed her into every audition, every review, every retrospective. They became the shadow at the edge of her light. And yet, she kept going. With every performance that came after dramatic turns in the Bedroom, nuanced roles in indie films, and even a reinvention in the Marvel Universe. As Aunt May, she reminded audiences that her talent wasn't a fluke. It was fierce, versatile, consistent. Still, the sting never quite disappeared. When she finally spoke, the response was immediate. Media outlets praised her candor. Critics reevaluated the controversy with fresh eyes. Her words became a reckoning not just with the past, but with a culture that had failed to protect her. Publications like Variety, The Hollywood Reporter, and The Guardian ran features not just on her bravery, but on the systemic disregard for comedic actresses, especially those who came from outside the traditional elite. Her story echoed across industries and generations, and in telling it, Tomei reclaimed the moment that was always hers. She did not ask for pity. She asked for truth. And that, at last, was something no one could distort. With the truth laid bare, it's time to reflect on the legacy of this saga. Beyond the controversy lies a story of talent, perseverance, and vindication. Today, when critics look back on the 1993 Oscars, the conversation no longer centers on doubt. It centers on how Marisa Tomei's win marked a turning point. In an industry that once refused to see comedy as high art, her performance shattered expectations. Time, it turns out, is the greatest equalizer. The skepticism that once clouded her moment has been replaced by admiration. Film scholars, directors, and even former skeptics now acknowledge the sheer precision of her role in My Cousin Vinny. What was once treated as an anomaly is now recognized as a masterclass in comedic performance. And that recognition came not because the industry evolved on its own, but because women like Marisa forced it to. Over the past 3 decades, the Academy itself has undergone a reckoning. The gatekeepers who once demanded dramatic tears and period pieces to validate a nomination have had to step aside for a new generation of voters, ones who understand that truth comes in many forms. Laughter can be as revealing as sorrow. Wit can be as sharp as tragedy. And characters like Mona Lisa Vito deserve to stand shoulder to shoulder with kings, queens, and tortured geniuses. Marisa's Oscar didn't just celebrate her, it opened a door. It forced Hollywood to question the biases it clung to, and the performances it habitually overlooked. And Tomei didn't fade into the background. She didn't crumble under the weight of whispers or retreat from the spotlight. Instead, she evolved. She returned to theater, choosing roles with depth and complexity. She took risks on screen, moving effortlessly between big-budget blockbusters and intimate indie dramas. Whether playing a grieving mother, a manipulative lover, or a wise and weary aunt, she showed the same fire, the same authenticity that had once electrified audiences in that Alabama courtroom. Her longevity became its own quiet triumph, one that didn't need trophies or headlines to validate it. But the controversy surrounding her win left a permanent scar, not just on her, but on Hollywood's cultural fabric. It exposed how quickly a woman's success can be questioned when it doesn't conform to established norms. It revealed the deep-rooted discomfort the industry has with female confidence, especially when delivered through humor, defiance, or working-class grit. And it showed the world how damaging silence can be not hers, but the silence of those who knew better and said nothing. Still, from that storm came something powerful, a new understanding of what excellence looks like. It doesn't always wear a crown. Sometimes it wears leopard print and tells the truth louder than anyone expects. Marisa Tomei's win wasn't an accident. It was a statement, a bold declaration that art isn't defined by genre, background, or pedigree. It's defined by impact. Marisa Tomei's journey reminds us that true talent transcends doubt and stands the test of time. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. and we will see you in the next one.